Hello, everyone. So, today, what I'm going to be talking about is getting into a little bit of just kind of a primer, if you will, of some of the basics of Italian society, kind of the setup of their cities, some social order, some women and children. I'm just going to give you a little bit of everything today, and we'll be getting into those a little bit deeper as we move on. But I think the whole idea today is for me to give you an idea of why Italy, particularly northern Italy, was a little bit different than everywhere else, and why the Renaissance kind of got kickstarted there. And we've talked about it a little bit before. We'll talk about more moving forward, but let's get into it now. So, some basics of things we need to understand. First and foremost, again, this is northern Italy. Not that southern Italy wasn't going to be doing anything. Northern Italy will get there, and like northeastern Italy as well, like Venice and places like that. And again, the focus here is on an urban society. I'll be talking about more about the cities in a little bit, but urbanness was key here because that was a center of exchange and trade and knowledge and just all sorts of stuff. Also, because of the city-state aspect of it, of Italy in particular, what was good about that, like long term, it's not good because they're not going to be strong enough once nations form. But short term, it gives them the freedom to kind of do what they want to do, to get involved in what they want to get involved in, and that's going to make a difference. And which then leads to, again, that freedom. And what we also hear is that there was a revival and focus on the idea that individuals can achieve great things. And I don't want to always focus on individuals, but the Renaissance was a time in which you did have some significant people um, that were around. And here, for instance, is an Italian architect and artist by the name of Leon Battista Alberti, who had this great quote here: men can do all things if they will. So the idea of focusing on the ideas that you can do something and you can be involved, and as a result, you can make a change. Now, what's crucial to all of this, though, is money. You need to have money to do so many of these things. And I can't stress this point enough. And as the Middle Ages were going on, interesting enough, Italy for quite a long time was taking a hit. Of course, everybody got hit with the plague in the 1300s, and that was pretty devastating. I mean, like one third of Europe died. So that's never good. And that decimated trade and industry. And again, Italy was the epicenter of this. Italy's where the plague started. Now, what went along with that is because of all of that, the focus of trade actually moved to the north, the Hanseatic League, which I talked about in previous videos. So go back and watch that if you don't remember, which again was a group of 80 cities that controlled trade in the region. And the league eventually would falter because national identity, but so Italy had to go against all of this stuff. But in the late 14th and early 15th century, there are going to be a couple things like wool, mining, luxury goods, silk and glassware, more available metal, things like copper, iron, and silver. So what the Italians are going to do are going to focus on kind of big ticket items. So they're like luxury goods, and they're kind of goods that everyone needs, like all like rolled up into one. And by getting into those particular fields, they were really in demand, and as a result, people, were going to make lots of money in Italy in general because of that. But what really is going to set them to the next level is going to be banking. And banking is going to be huge. It's a huge cog of everything today. And this is really what puts Italy into the stratosphere. And if you're going to be talking about banking in Italy, you have to talk about the Medici family in Florence. They are the ones that helped to revolutionize it, starting as early as the 1300s. The gentleman you see on there on the right is Cosimo de' Medici, who was of huge importance to the Renaissance in general, and I talk about him in other videos, so you can look at some of my other videos for that. But he took a new and kind of inventive approach with banking, and then what he did with the massive amounts of money he made from banking. So, like, for instance, one of the things that these guys were doing would that they would invest in a variety of different industries, and those investments gave them huge returns. Sometimes they get a cut of the profits and things like that. They would then use those returns to buy up controlling aspects of those industries. So they would start with a little bit of an investment, say, in a wool industry. And as they made more money, they would buy more parts of it till eventually they control multiple businesses, or they're like controlling partners of more than just one business. And wool, silk, alum, and textiles was huge. They would then get into financing and lending money to national leaders, including the papacy. And the Medici Bank in general actually goes international with branches in Venice, Milan, Rome, Avignon, Bruges, or Bruges, Bruges. I don't know. Look it up. It's in Belgium. London and Lyon. So you're talking about this idea of modern banking. Now, you can attribute a lot of things in Europe to modern banking to the Templars and the 11th, 12th, and 13th century, but the Italians are just going to take it to that next level. And they're going to have tons and tons of money. And with that tons of money, they were also going to do things like open up schools and hire guys to go find out knowledge and pay for scholars. They are going to help support scholarly endeavors. And so all of it kind of goes back to that. And the long-term impact is that eventually the businessman is going to take over the noble for the top of the heap as far as society is concerned. And it's around this time that that's going to begin. So we're going to get into that more later. This is just the outside of their palace, just to get an idea. And they had multiple homes all over the place. So there's that one, and then here's inside with these like crazy clear plastic chairs. I guess they do stuff in here. Yeah, they can like watch stuff. I guess it's like a visitor center or something. But you can see like the frescoes on the ceiling. It's crazy. It's crazy. And what looks like gold is gold, just so you know. Now, what we're going to see here, though, is that the nobility is still running the show, okay? They are going to take a hit with the plague. They're going to lose some income because you will have a drop in agricultural production, which was the basis of a lot of their wealth. And, all the peasants died. You can't farm. But they're only about 2 to 3% of the population. But what starts to happen is that they are going to change a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong. These people are still, in general, about building their wealth. They still have favors from kings and lords, and sometimes even within republics themselves, like the little republics and city-state. The nobility still is the top dog, and they still get to do whatever they kind of want. But what's going to become interesting is that this is kind of an old Greek idea that what takes you to the next level as a noble is to get involved with your city-state, and that's either building things, helping with education, sometimes serving on committees, but the whole idea is that you are going to give back to your country, if you will, in some way. And we really get to understand that in a kind of how-to book for Italian nobility that was incredibly popular, and it gives us really an inkling of what the expectation was. And this was the Book of the Courtier by Baldassare Castiglione. And the core ideas here, and you see him on the right, the core ideas is that like each individual noble must have impeccable character and grace, that they have great manners. Also here, though, the little stereotyping, if you will, not stereotyping, but like you have to be of noble blood, so no peasants in the bloodline. So again, we're still going to want to keep it as very this small group as humanly possible. So still going to be kind of discriminatory that way, don't get me wrong. That they also should be able to bear arms, and being an officer in the military, being physically fit, so that's very interesting there. He should have a classical education involved in the arts, and involve arts in his life, like visual arts, playing instruments, stuff like that. Again, that well-roundedness of the Renaissance. They should be honest and serve their lord or prince with loyalty. And then finally, you need to use those attributes to achieve something which is typically based on service. That's the purpose. You have service, okay? And if you do those things, you're a noble. And so that's why we see this boom in education. We see this boom in public projects, because this was a Roman thing, this was a Greek thing, and we're kind of bringing that back. And so you are going to get nobles that are a little bit more involved. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still going to be able to do what they want, and some regular guy. There's no rising up through the ranks. You have to be born to it, but at least they're giving back a little bit. Peasants, they're still kind of peasants. It's the vast majority of the population. You see some scenes here of your Italian farmers. The money economy is going to change, which is going to be really interesting. If there was a place for you to be a peasant in, Italy wasn't a half bad place to be a peasant, because serfdom basically dies, and it dies because of the money economy. The whole idea is that laborers are going to get paid to work. And so we're going to just break out of this whole serfdom manor system thing. So farmers are going to raise crops, and they're going to sell them, and they pay rents for land. Now, the nobles still own the land, so that's how they still control the power. But if you can have a good harvest, you can do more things, you can save money. This will help lead to the development of kind of the middle class later on. We'll get to that. It also eliminates like loyalty requirements and stuff like that. And actually, as a result, nobles found this easier to free people from service and then accept the rents. And in many cases, they had to do this because so many people died of the plague that they couldn't just like control as many people anymore, because those people who didn't die, their work was a lot more valuable. And so that system worked out a lot better. And we also have the growth of the town at this point. Now, this is a more larger town, but smaller towns and cities are getting even bigger. Of course, the city-state is central, but it's not just going to be that city. So, for instance, Florence is going to control a bunch of land that includes other cities, like, say, Urbino and things like that. These areas are going to be very stratified, though. There's a big-time social hierarchy, okay? At the top are the patricians. These are the large and wealthy business owners who, as a result, in Italy also gained political positions. And interestingly enough, not so different today. Look at, say, in the United States Congress, look at your President of the United States here. Again, I'm speaking in 2018 when I'm doing this video. Background in business, okay? Then you have a group called the petty burghers. I don't know if that's good or not, but whatever. But these are shopkeepers and artisans and guild masters and some guild members. They are providing the goods that are needed. Then you had propertyless workers who often get paid low and live in not so great conditions. We'll get to those later. And then you do have the homeless and jobless. They do live in terrible conditions. They are hated by the nobility, and nothing is really ever done except periodically booting them from cities. And again, I'm just introducing this to get you the center of this and understand that these were what it's all about. Now, with the growth of the town and the change of the economy, slavery isn't gone. It's actually introduced back into Italy. So the good part is like, hey, we're getting rid of the serfs, but wait, we're bringing back slaves. What? They're often used by wealthy merchants. Sometimes they actually enslave people and have them make handicrafts to make some money on the side. They are often used also as wet nurses and babysitters and playmates for wealthy children. Also concubines, basically sex workers, if you will. And we've talked about that before. I'll talk about it again. Most of the time they're coming from Eastern Mediterranean and Black Sea areas, Muslims from Spain, Africans from Ethiopia, North Africa. And the state that was really at the center of it was Venice. And Venice, not only did they have slaves, they also participated in chattel slavery, the buying and selling of slaves as well. Now, it would decline in Italy in the late 16th century, but don't worry, the Portuguese will get involved again, the New World, and we kind of know where it goes from there. Now, Italian families, some things that were going on with them. So marriages. So you have all these cities and peasants and all this, but again, everything is still run by kind of like the family unit. So the family units are absolutely crucial and important. Arranged marriages were the way to go. This would often be worked out, and then it would become worked out by the parents, but then you had marriage contracts that were signed, and it was all about the dowry, okay? This was a large sum of money or goods given to the groom by the wife's family upon marriage. This is actually where we get the idea that the bride's family should pay for the wedding. So a little transfer there to the modern world. Now, if a woman was able to have a large dowry, she could marry up in social standing, and then her family could get elevated. So again, still kind of need some nobility stuff here, but this is, as I said before, how merchants are going to be able to creep into the noble land. Merchants makes tons of money. A noble doesn't have a lot of money. Well, we can give you a bunch of stuff if our daughter marries up. Okay. So we get a little social change there. If marrying below their status, the dowry would be smaller because the husband would be coming up, and so that would be kind of the trade-off that they would have there. Still completely patriarchal. The husband runs everything, and technically the wife doesn't even own property in Italy. Father controlled the children, actually until he died or released them. So I am making this point. I'm 42 years old. If this was Italy back in the day and my father told me to do something and I didn't do it, you know what? I could actually go to jail. Fun fact. In order for them to become completely released, they had to go in front of a judge and get formally emancipated. And sometimes families would do this because they want their children to go into business or whatever, but, you know, they didn't have to. And then finally, women and children here, as you see a picture of the family. Women did manage the household, but they were not allowed to manage finances. Women of upper and middle classes were expected to stay at home, which actually meant they couldn't go out without being chaperoned. This is not, you know, we have a lot of societies in world history that have that, and in Italy and many other areas of Europe at this time, not a lot of people know that idea. Women could not go out in public unless escorted by certain servants or males or soldiers or something like that. Men could have extramarital affairs without any real concerns, but women could face execution, and prostitution was legal and regulated. So for women, it was tough. Key thing for them was to have children. You have to have a male heir, and childbirth was very dangerous. As many as 10% of women were dying in childbirth here. And for children, life expectancy is not great. For instance, Florence, 50% of children died before the age of 20 during the Renaissance period. Now, children, on the other hand, if you were in the upper or middle classes, you would get some opportunities for play and learning and stuff like that. And that's going to kind of be a big thing here. Middle and upper class children, you'll see, and we'll talk about in other videos, expected to get an education, expected to go into business and things like that. Peasant children, you're basically going to follow into whatever your family says you're going to do. All right, so this gives you a little sense of what was going on in Italy at the time, kind of societal-wise. We'll get more into this in class, and hopefully that gives you guys a nice sense of what's going on. All right, I'll see you soon.